Derek Williams leaned back in his chair and smiled as he watched his wife Layla bustling about in the kitchen. Through the glass door, he could see her skillfully chopping vegetables, occasionally stirring something in a pot. 15 years of marriage had not diminished his admiration for this woman. At 35, Layla had retained her slim figure, and her dark skin seemed completely unaffected by age. Their two-story house in a quiet neighborhood in Millville was the embodiment of the American dream for a middle-class family. Derek worked as a manager at an insurance company, and Layla taught math at a local high school. They didn't have children. At first, they wanted to get on their feet, then pay off the mortgage, and then somehow they got used to living together. However, this only brought them closer together. "Dinner's in 20 minutes, Layla called out, noticing his gaze. Derek nodded and returned to his laptop. Their wedding anniversary was less than a month away, and he wanted to do something special. Last time they flew to Jamaica, Layla's grandmother's homeland, but this year finances did not allow for such luxury, so he decided to find a gift that would truly impress his wife. Derek was aimlessly flipping through the pages of jewelry when his gaze caught on an unusual ring. It was massive, yet elegant, with a white gold base artfully curved into a wave shape, inside which was set a large rectangular cut diamond, flanked on both sides by small rubies that created a splash effect. The design was bold, even provocative, but for some reason Derek instantly imagined the ring on Layla's finger. He clicked on the image, expecting to see the price, but instead found himself on an article from the Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous section. The ring, it turned out, was an exclusive piece of jewelry created for a Hollywood star and cost a fortune. Derek sighed in disappointment, but the idea was already stuck in his head. What if I had a copy made? He thought. The next day, during his lunch break, Derek went to the Golden Hands Jewelry Workshop, located a few blocks from his office. The small, dimly lit room seemed stuck in time, as did its owner, an elderly man named Moses Tucker, known to everyone in the neighborhood as an old-school craftsman. "I'd like to order a ring for my wife," Derek said, handing him the printed photo. "Can you make something like this?" Moses studied the image carefully, putting on his thick-rimmed glasses. "Interesting work," he muttered, "but expensive. Those curves are complicated. It will require a lot of handwork." "I understand," Derek nodded, "but it can be simplified. The main thing is to keep the overall look." The jeweler scratched his gray beard thoughtfully. "I can offer silver instead of platinum, and cubic zirconia instead of diamonds. We'll replace the rubies with garnets. It will look almost the same, but cost a fraction of the price." "No, I want real gold," Derek said firmly. "And real stones. They can be smaller, but they have to be real. It's a 15th wedding anniversary gift." Moses's eyes flashed with respect. 15 years, you say? All right, I'll make it out of white gold. We'll use a small diamond, but a good quality one. Instead of rubies, we can use red sapphires. They're cheaper, but look just as good. They discussed the details, and Derek left a deposit, an amount that made his heart ache, but he was determined to get this gift. Over the next 3 weeks, Derek visited the workshop every few days to watch the ring being made. Moses worked slowly, but with incredible care. He personally selected the stones, showing Derek different cuts and colors, and patiently explaining the differences between them. Gradually, the piece of metal was transformed into a work of art. "I've never made exact copies of designer pieces," Moses admitted one day as he worked on the setting for the center stone. "I usually create something of my own or based on the customer's sketches. But I have to admit, there's something special about this ring." "Do you think your wife will like it?" Derek asked. Moses smiled, revealing a gold tooth. "If she doesn't, bring her to me. I'll explain how beautiful it is." 2 days before the anniversary, the ring was ready. When Moses took it out of the velvet box, Derek froze in admiration. The ring looked even better than in the photo, more vibrant with the light dancing on the stones and the soft glow of white gold. "It's amazing," Derek breathed. "Yes, it turned out well." The jeweler nodded modestly, but you could see in his eyes that he was also pleased with the result. On their anniversary, Derek came home early with a bouquet of red roses and a bottle of champagne. Layla, already dressed in her favorite black dress, greeted him with a hug. "Happy anniversary, my love," she whispered. They had a candlelit dinner, reminiscing about funny moments from their life together. After dessert, Derek took out a small box. "This is for you," he said, handing her the gift. Layla slowly opened the box and froze, her eyes wide. "Derek, this..." She couldn't find the words. "Do you like it?" he asked excitedly. Instead of answering, she slipped the ring onto her finger and burst into tears of happiness. "It's perfect," Layla finally said, admiring the way the light sparkled in the stones. "I've never seen anything like it. It must have cost a fortune." "You're worth every penny," Derek smiled, delighted by her reaction. Over the next few days, Layla didn't take the ring off, constantly glancing at it and periodically turning her hand to admire the way the light played on the stones. At work, her colleagues showered her with compliments and questions. "Where did your husband find such a treasure?" they asked. "He designed it himself," Layla replied proudly, although Derek hadn't told her that the ring was a replica. On Friday evening, a week after their anniversary, Layla posted a photo of the ring on her Instagram account with the caption, "The best gift from the best husband for our 15th anniversary." The post garnered dozens of enthusiastic comments and hundreds of likes, mostly from her students, their parents, and colleagues. Derek glanced over his wife's shoulder at her phone and felt a surge of pride. "You're a social media star," he joked. "It's all thanks to you." Layla kissed him on the cheek. They couldn't have known that among the many people who saw that photo was someone for whom that ring meant much more than just a beautiful piece of jewelry. On Saturday morning, Derek went out to get the newspaper and noticed a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street. He didn't think much of it. It was a nice neighborhood, and expensive cars were nothing unusual there. However, that evening, on his way home from the movies with Layla, he saw a similar car again, this time 2 blocks from their house. On Sunday, as he was driving to the supermarket, Derek noticed that a black car was following them. He turned into random side streets several times, and the car followed their route. Derek felt a vague sense of unease. "Is something wrong?" Layla asked, noticing his tension. "No, everything's fine," he lied, not wanting to worry her. "Just thinking about a work project." That evening, while Layla was taking a shower, Derek looked out the window and saw 2 large men walking slowly down their street, looking closely at the houses. One of them stopped in front of their yard and stared at the second-floor windows for a long time. That night, Derek couldn't sleep for a long time. Something was going on, and he didn't understand what it was, but his intuition told him it had something to do with the ring that lay peacefully on Layla's bedside table. Raymond the King sat in his office on the top floor of the Empire nightclub like a true monarch. At 53, he controlled most of the illegal business in Millville and the surrounding areas. Tall and athletic, a physique he maintained with daily workouts, King exuded strength and power. His short-cropped hair was already touched by gray, but that only added to his gravitas. Raymond's left hand was adorned with a massive ring, the design of which had accidentally inspired Derek Williams to buy a gift for his wife. But for King, this piece of jewelry was more than just an expensive trinket. Everyone in the Millville criminal underworld knew the story behind this ring. 20 years ago, when Raymond was just starting his journey to the top, he made a deal with a Mexican drug cartel. The deal was risky but successful, and in gratitude, the cartel boss gave him this ring, created by the best jewelers in Mexico City. The diamond in the center was flawless, weighing 3 carats, and the rubies on the sides symbolized the blood of his enemies. According to legend, the white gold of the setting was mixed with platinum extracted from ancient Spanish coins. Since then, the ring had never left King's hand. It became his talisman, a symbol of power and invulnerability. Over the course of 20 years, Raymond survived 3 assassination attempts, 2 prison terms, and countless police raids, but he always emerged victorious. "As long as I have the ring, I am invincible," he liked to repeat to his entourage. So when the ring disappeared a month ago, King was distraught. It happened after a party at the Empire, attended by dozens of people, from members of his organization to corrupt officials and police officers. King remembered clearly how he had taken off the ring before going to the rooftop pool. He left the jewelry in his office, in a special box. When he returned, the box was empty. Surveillance cameras did not record anything suspicious. Whoever stole the ring knew the location of the cameras and the blind spots in the security system. This indicated that the thief was someone close to King. "Find my ring," Raymond ordered his men, "and whoever stole it. I don't want him dead, but first I want to know who it is and why." For 4 weeks, his men turned the city upside down. Everyone who had been at the party was questioned, and every pawn shop and jewelry store in the city was checked. King even offered a $100,000 reward for information about the ring, but to no avail. The jewelry seemed to have vanished into thin air. Raymond grew gloomier with each passing day. He was superstitious and believed that the loss of the ring foreshadowed the collapse of his empire. For the first time in many years, King felt vulnerable. That morning, as one of his bodyguards, Marcus, was aimlessly scrolling through his Instagram feed, something happened that in any other situation could have been called a miracle. "Boss," Marcus called, handing him the phone. "Look at this." The screen showed a photo of a woman's hand with a ring that looked remarkably similar to King's missing jewelry. Raymond snatched the phone from his subordinate's hands and stared at the image. The shape, the arrangement of the stones, even the curve of the setting, everything matched. The only thing that seemed different was the size of the stones, but that might not be obvious in the photo. "Who is she?" King hissed through clenched teeth. "Some woman named Layla Williams," Marcus replied. "A school teacher. She lives in Oak Ridge, a suburb 20 minutes from here. Husband? Derek Williams, manager at Global Insurance, your typical middle-class family." Raymond frowned. An insurance company? That could make sense. Insurance agents have access to information about their clients' valuables. Perhaps this Derek had somehow found out about the ring and its significance. "Find out everything you can about this couple," King ordered, "and find me a jeweler who could have made that ring. If it's a fake, I want to know who made it." Over the next 3 days, King's people followed Derek and Layla, studying their daily routine, habits, and connections. The couple led a quiet life. Work, home, sometimes dinner at a restaurant or a movie on the weekends. Nothing unusual, no signs of sudden wealth or ties to the criminal world. However, Marcus discovered that a month before the ring appeared, Derek had visited the Golden Hands jewelry workshop several times. By a lucky coincidence, the owner of the workshop, Moses Tucker, was an old acquaintance of King's. Early in his career, Raymond had used his services to sell stolen jewelry. "Bring old Moses to me," King ordered. "But keep it quiet. I don't want the Williamses to suspect anything." That evening, a trembling Moses Tucker stood before Raymond King in the back room of the Empire. The years had not been kind to the jeweler. He had aged considerably, his hair had turned gray, and he was stooped, but the hands holding his hat were still strong and confident, the hands of a master. "Long time no see, Moses," King smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "Too long, Mr. King," the jeweler muttered. "What do I owe you?" Raymond showed him a photo of the ring on Layla's hand. "Is this your work?" Moses looked closely at the image and nodded slowly. "Yes, I made that ring for Derek Williams about a month ago." "Tell me everything," King demanded, pouring himself a whiskey. "Every detail." Moses recounted how Derek had come to him with a photograph of the ring he wanted to give his wife for their anniversary, how they had discussed materials and stones, how they had chosen the diamond and sapphires together, how Derek came in regularly to watch the work progress. "Did he say where he found the picture of the original?" King asked. "On the internet," Moses shrugged. "He said he saw it in some article about celebrities." "And you didn't ask why he wanted a copy of someone else's ring?" "Mr. King," the old man looked up at him wearily, "people are always bringing in pictures of celebrities' jewelry and asking us to make something similar but cheaper. There's nothing unusual about that." "What about the stones?" Raymond leaned forward. "Did he insist on specific stones?" "No." Moses shook his head. "He just wanted real gemstones, not imitations. I suggested a smaller diamond and red sapphires instead of rubies to stay within his budget." King thoughtfully twirled his whiskey glass. "So you're saying it's just a coincidence? That this manager stumbled across a photo of my ring and decided to make a copy?" "It seems that way." The jeweler nodded. He seemed like an honest man who just wanted to make his wife happy. Raymond was silent, thinking about what he had heard. The story sounded plausible, but too convenient. Too many coincidences. His ring disappeared, and a month later, an exact copy appeared. "You're saying Williams found the photo on the internet?" King asked. "In an article about celebrities?" "Yes, that's what he said," Moses confirmed. "Interesting." Raymond tapped his fingers on the table. "Because I've never been photographed with that ring for the press. And I haven't given it to any celebrities. That ring is my personal talisman, known only to those closest to me." Moses swallowed nervously. "Maybe someone took a picture of you without your knowledge, at some event?" "Possibly," King agreed reluctantly. "Or maybe Williams is lying. Maybe he was deliberately looking for information about me and my ring." "But why, Mr. King?" Moses dared to ask. "He's an ordinary man, living a modest life. Why would he want to attract your attention?" Raymond didn't answer. He wondered if his ring was being sought by competitors who wanted to deprive him of its talismanic power. What if Williams was just a pawn in someone else's game? A front man? "Moses," King finally said, "I want you to answer one question. A lot depends on your answer. Could this be my real ring that someone altered by reducing the size of the stones?" The jeweler shook his head. "No, Mr. King. I worked on this ring from scratch. It's a completely new piece made from a photograph. It's not your ring." Raymond stared into his eyes for a long time, trying to detect a hint of a lie, but Moses held his gaze. "All right," King finally said. "You're free to go. But if it turns out you're lying to me, I'm too old to play with fire, Mr. King," Moses said quietly. "I swear I told you the truth." After the jeweler left, Raymond sat alone for a long time, thinking about the situation. Something about this story didn't add up. Too many coincidences, and his ring was still missing. "Marcus," he called to his bodyguard, "we're going to pay the Williams a visit. Tonight. I want to make sure that Derek has nothing to do with the theft of my ring." "You think he might be involved?" "I don't know," King replied honestly. "But I have a bad feeling about this, and I'm used to trusting my instincts." Raymond always relied on his intuition, and right now it was screaming that there was more to this seemingly harmless story than met the eye. Perhaps it was all just a coincidence. But what if it wasn't? What if Williams was somehow connected to those who stole his talisman? King couldn't ignore it. He ordered his men to gather information about the photo of the ring that Derek had shown the jeweler. One of his computer-savvy men quickly found the source, an article in a little-known online magazine about jewelry trends. The article contained several photos, including one of a hand wearing a ring that looked remarkably similar to King's. The caption read, "A unique ring with diamonds and rubies, created for an anonymous collector." "Shit," Raymond cursed. "That's a photo of my ring. Someone photographed it and sold it to the magazine. Now it all made sense. Someone in his circle who had access to the ring took a photo of it and sold it to the magazine. And then, perhaps the same person stole the original. It was quite possible that Derek Williams had simply seen the photo and decided to make a copy for his wife. But that didn't change the fact that the photo had been taken without King's knowledge, and that his ring was still missing. "We're still going to visit the Williams," Raymond decided. "I want to see that ring with my own eyes. And if it really is a copy, maybe they can tell us more about the article and the photo." But the more King thought about it, the more his anxiety grew. He was a superstitious man, and the thought of someone wearing a copy of his talisman, even unknowingly, filled him with irrational anger. In his mind, it was like a curse. Another copy of his ring, another division of his talisman's power. "What if it's not just a coincidence?" he muttered. "What if someone deliberately created this situation to weaken me?" Dark thoughts swirled in Raymond's head. Perhaps it was a cunning plan by his rivals. First take a photo of the ring and distribute it, then steal the original, thereby weakening its influence. And now that a copy had appeared, its power was even more scattered. "No," King said firmly, "I won't let this continue." Derek Williams woke up with a heavy feeling. He had been having nightmares all night, running through a dark maze, pursued by an invisible threat. Layla noticed his state at breakfast. "You look pale," she said, touching his forehead. "Are you sick?" "No, I just slept badly," Derek dismissed her. "By the way, how about we go to your sister's for the weekend? It's been a while since we visited Sheila." The idea came to him suddenly. Maybe they should get out of town for a while until he figured out what was going on. The black cars and strangers watching their house were bothering him. Layla looked at him in surprise. Why? I have an important meeting at school tomorrow. I can't go. Sure, of course. Derek smiled tensely. I just thought, never mind. He couldn't concentrate at work. He made 2 mistakes in insurance calculations and forgot to call back an important client. His boss gave him dirty looks, but Derek didn't care. Something was coming. He could feel it in every fiber of his being. During his lunch break, he decided to visit Moses. Maybe the jeweler could shed some light on what was going on. Perhaps there was something wrong with the ring? But when Derek arrived at Golden Hands, the workshop was closed. A note hung on the door. Closed due to family circumstances. It was strange. In all the years Derek had known Moses, he had never closed the workshop on a workday. That evening, on his way home, Derek noticed a black SUV parked a block away from his house. He decided to take action. Instead of turning onto his street, he drove past and circled the neighborhood. The car hadn't moved. Was he being paranoid? Derek pulled into the garage and sat in his car for a while, trying to collect his thoughts. Then he got out and headed for the house. Layla was already home, cooking dinner. She was humming as she stirred the sauce, the ill-fated ring glinting on her finger. Hi, honey. She smiled when she saw him. How was your day? Fine. Derek kissed her on the cheek. Layla, we need to talk. She looked at him intently, turned off the stove and wiped her hands with a towel. What's wrong? Derek took a deep breath. I'm not sure, but I think we're being followed. There have been strange people in cars hanging around the house for several days, and I think... He paused. It has something to do with the ring. Layla frowned in confusion. The ring? Why? I don't know, Derek admitted honestly. But the strange thing started after you posted a photo of it on Instagram. Layla shook her head in disbelief. Derek, that sounds paranoid. Who would be interested in my ring? I know how it sounds. Derek ran his hand through his hair. But please, just trust me. I think we should go away for a couple of days. Maybe to your sister's or... The doorbell interrupted him mid-sentence. The couple froze, looking at each other. Are you expecting someone? Layla whispered. Derek shook his head and slowly walked to the door. Through the peephole, he saw 2 large men in dark suits. Who's there? He asked without opening the door. Mr. Williams? One of them replied. My name is Marcus Johnson. I'm with First National Bank Security. We have reason to believe that your credit card is being used fraudulently. We'd like to discuss this with you. Derek frowned. This sounded strange. Why had the bank sent people to his home instead of calling? And why so late? Show me your ID, he demanded. The man held up a card with the bank's logo to the peephole. It looked real, but something told Derek not to open the door. I'm sorry, but I'd rather come to the bank myself tomorrow, he said. It's late. Mr. Williams, this is very urgent, the man insisted. It's a large sum of money. If we don't block the card immediately, you could lose all your savings. Derek hesitated. All his instincts were screaming danger. But what if it really was the bank? What if his accounts were in jeopardy? Layla appeared behind him. What's going on? She asked. They say they're from the bank, Derek replied quietly. Something's wrong with our card. Then open it, Layla shrugged. Why are you hesitating? Derek took a deep breath and unlocked the door, but left the chain on. The crack was wide enough to see the visitors' faces, but too narrow for anyone to get inside. What do you want again? He asked. The man smiled, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. We need to talk about the ring, Mr. Williams. About your wife's ring. The bodies of the Williams couple were found 3 days after the murder. The alarm was raised when Layla didn't show up for an important meeting at school, and Derek didn't answer calls or messages from his boss. Layla's sister, Sheila, who couldn't get through to her relatives, asked neighbors to check on the house. When no one answered the door and Derek's car was in the garage, the neighbors called the police. Patrol officers found signs of forced entry at the front door and signs of a struggle in the living room. Going down to the basement to check the rest of the house, they found 2 bodies, Derek and Layla Williams. The couple was lying on the cold, concrete floor. According to the preliminary conclusion of the medical examiner, both were killed by gunshots to the head at close range. No signs of torture or sexual assault were found, which immediately ruled out the possibility of a serial killer. The investigation was assigned to Detective Michael Turner, an experienced 42-year-old police officer with 20 years of experience. Tall, with short gray hair and an attentive gaze, Turner had a reputation as a man who would not rest until he found answers to all his questions. He had dozens of solved murders behind him, and the respect of his colleagues. Turner's first task was to carefully examine the crime scene. He noted the absence of any signs of a robbery. Valuables had been left untouched. His attention was drawn to an empty ring box on the dressing table in the bedroom. "Maybe the victim was robbed of some jewelry," he said to his partner, Detective James Carter. "Check her social media photos and see what she was wearing." Carter, a young black police officer, nodded and made a note in his notebook. During the search, forensic experts found several fingerprints that did not belong to the victims and large shoe prints. They also found 2 9mm shell casings. Everything pointed to a professional hit. Clean shots to the head, minimal evidence, no witnesses. Turner questioned the neighbors. No one heard any shots or screams, which suggested the use of a silencer. However, an elderly woman who lived across the street recalled seeing a black SUV with tinted windows near the Williams home on the evening of the alleged murder. "Cars like that are rare around here," she said. "Our neighborhood is quiet and family-oriented. Mostly minivans and sedans drive around here." The detective's next step was to study the biographies of the victims. The Williams family seemed perfectly ordinary. Derek was an insurance company manager with a good reputation among his colleagues. Layla was a math teacher, loved by her students and respected by parents. No debts, no problems with the law, no suspicious connections. Carter found a photo of a ring on Layla's social media that she had posted a week before the murder. The ring was unusual, massive, with a large diamond and red stones on the sides. "This could be our lead," Turner said, looking at the enlarged photo. "Find out where it was bought." A check of bank accounts showed that Derek had withdrawn a significant amount of cash a month before the murder. Further investigation led detectives to a jewelry workshop called Golden Hands. The owner, Moses Tucker, confirmed that he had made the ring for Derek Williams based on a photo found on the internet. The old jeweler seemed nervous and reluctant to answer questions. "It was a gift for his wife's anniversary," he said. "Derek was a good man, always polite and courteous." "Do you know what happened to the ring?" "It disappeared from his home," Turner asked. Moses paled and shook his head. "I have no idea. It was an expensive piece, but nothing unusual." Turner sensed that the jeweler was hiding something, but decided not to press the issue for now. He left his business card and asked to be contacted if Moses remembered anything important. The next day, the detective received the results of the ballistics test. The bullets had been fired from a Glock Model 19, a common weapon that was difficult to trace. The fingerprint analysis proved more interesting. One of them belonged to a Marcus Johnson, a man with a long criminal record, including armed robbery and aggravated assault. "Bingo," Turner said, looking through Johnson's file. "We have a suspect." However, finding Marcus proved difficult. His last known address was long out of date, and his phone was disconnected. Turner contacted informants in criminal circles and found out that Johnson was working as a bodyguard for Raymond King, an influential businessman whom the police had long suspected of having ties to organized crime. "King?" Carter asked in surprise. "The King? What could connect an ordinary married couple to a man like that?" "Maybe the ring," Turner said thoughtfully. "We need more information about him." Further investigation led to an article in a little-known jewelry magazine that featured a photo of a ring identical to the one Derek had ordered. The caption referred to it as a unique piece for an anonymous collector. Turner began to suspect that Derek, without knowing it, had copied a ring belonging to King. The detective requested a search warrant for King's club Empire, but encountered unexpected resistance. "I'm sorry, Mike, but I can't sign that warrant," said Captain Rogers, avoiding Turner's gaze. "Not enough evidence." "Not enough evidence?" Turner exclaimed. "We have the fingerprints of a man working for King found at the scene of a double murder." One fingerprint is not enough for a search warrant for the business of a respected citizen, the captain replied curtly. Bring me something more substantial. Turner began to suspect that his boss was under pressure. He decided to take a different approach. He set up surveillance on the Empire Club and began gathering information about King and his associates. Soon, the detective discovered that King did indeed have an expensive ring that he considered his lucky charm, and that the ring had recently disappeared. Michael visited Moses Tucker again, but found the workshop closed. Neighbors reported that the jeweler had suddenly left, saying he was visiting relatives in another state. This seemed suspicious. Turner decided to take direct action and went to the Empire. He introduced himself as a regular visitor and, ordering a drink at the bar, began to casually ask the bartender about King and his associates. The bartender was uncommunicative, but one of the regulars, a middle-aged man who was tipsy, was more forthcoming. "The King's been in a bad mood lately," he said, downing another shot. "They say he lost his lucky charm, some kind of special ring. Now he's taking revenge on those who might have taken it." "Did he find it?" Turner asked casually. "I don't know." The man shrugged. "But a couple of days ago he seemed happy, as if he had solved some problem." The detective continued to gather information. He learned that on the night of the Williams murders, a black SUV belonging to King had been seen in their neighborhood. He also managed to establish that Marcus Johnson and 2 other bodyguards had accompanied King that evening. Turner was sure he had found the killers, but he still lacked evidence. He went back to the captain to ask for a warrant. "Listen, Mike," Rogers sighed. "I know you're a good detective, but King is an influential man with serious connections. We can't just bust into his club based on circumstantial evidence." "A double murder isn't enough?" Turner protested. "Bring me irrefutable proof and I'll sign the warrant," the captain replied. "But until then, you're on your own." The next day, Turner discovered that some of the evidence he had collected had disappeared from the storage room. The surveillance footage of the Empire Club had been erased, and the report on Marcus Johnson's fingerprint had been mysteriously altered. It now stated that it was too unclear to identify. "What the hell is going on?" muttered the detective, looking through the altered documents. "Someone really doesn't want this case solved," Carter remarked. Turner realized that corruption had penetrated the police department deeper than he had thought. King had enough influence to manipulate the investigation from within. The detective decided to go it alone. He contacted federal agent Simon Green, with whom he had worked on another case several years earlier. Green was an honest man with connections in the FBI. "I need your help, Simon," Turner said when he met the agent at an inconspicuous cafe. "I have serious suspects in a double murder, but someone is blocking the investigation." Green listened carefully to the detective and promised to help. "I can't officially interfere in a local investigation without a request from your department," he said. "But I can run an informal check on King. We've had an interest in his activities for some time." Over the next week, Turner and Green secretly gathered information. They managed to establish that on the night of the murders, King and his men had indeed visited the Williams home. They also found a witness, a homeless man who saw 3 men carrying something out of the house and loading it into a black SUV. Turner was encouraged. With the new evidence, he could get a warrant even without the captain's support. He planned to go directly to the district attorney. However, the next day, Michael discovered that the homeless witness had disappeared. No one had seen him in his usual places. And the day after that, Captain Rogers called Turner into his office. "You're being transferred, Mike," he said dryly. "Starting tomorrow, you'll be working in the narcotics division in Riverdale." "Riverdale? That's 200 miles away," Turner exclaimed. "You can't do that." "It's not my decision." The captain looked guilty. "Orders from above. The Williams case is being transferred to Detective Morrison." Turner knew Morrison, a mediocre detective who never dug deep and always took the path of least resistance. "That's not fair," Michael said quietly. "I was close to solving the case." "Almost is the key word," Rogers sighed. "You don't have any hard evidence, and King has connections at the top." That evening, Turner sat at home, mulling over the situation. He could either give in and let the killers go unpunished, or continue the investigation unofficially. risking his career and possibly his life. A call from Simon Green interrupted his thoughts. "Mike, I've got some bad news." The agent's voice sounded tense. "I've been ordered to drop any unofficial investigation into King. Someone very high up is covering for him." "So it's over?" Turner asked bitterly. "For me, yes," Green replied. "But I want you to know that you were right. King was involved in the Williams murders. We intercepted a conversation between him and someone from the police department. He mentioned a problem with the ring that had to be dealt with radically. And that's not enough to arrest him? The recording was obtained illegally," Green sighed. "We can't use it in court. And to be honest, I'm not sure we could do anything even with legal evidence. This man has too many connections." The next day, before leaving for Riverdale, Turner visited the cemetery where Derek and Layla Williams were buried. He placed flowers on their graves and stood there for a long time, staring at the headstones. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I did everything I could." A month later, the Williams murder case was officially closed as unsolved. The report stated that there was insufficient evidence to identify the perpetrators. The theory that the murder was connected to Raymond King was not even mentioned. Detective Morrison suggested that the murder could have been the work of unknown robbers, although nothing of value had been taken from the house except for a ring. This explanation satisfied everyone, from the police chief to the mayor. Raymond King continued his activities. His influence in the city only grew. He opened another nightclub and bought a stake in a construction company. On his left hand, he once again wore a massive ring with diamonds and rubies, the very one he considered his talisman. Michael Turner worked in Riverdale, dealing with small-time drug dealers. Sometimes at night, he would look over his notes on the Williams case, hoping that justice would prevail someday. In the basement of the house where the murder had taken place, the new owners had renovated the space, hiding all traces of the tragedy. No one remembered Derek and Layla Williams, an ordinary couple whose lives had been cut short by a simple coincidence.